So welcome everyone. So good morning.
Good morning.
Okay. Not so enthusiastic this good morning, so I'm gonna ask again. Good morning.
Good morning.
Much better. All right. So welcome everyone watching us through the internet. It's a pleasure to have all of you here. It's a beautiful day outside, although it's still a little bit chilly, right? So today we're gonna have a lecture from Teresa talking about Euripedes Barsanulfo, the man and the mission. Hope I have pronounced his name correctly. But before we do that, we're gonna have Mateus doing the reading and Maria Rosa doing our prayer. Okay, thank you.
So I'm going to be reading Happy Life, page 49. Make an agreement with yourself to carry out all your tasks in an orderly and unhurried fashion. The person who thinks highly of what he does gives it beauty and meaning, all the better to carry it out. All work is noble, no matter how insignificant it may be considered or how humble. The universe and the worm, so different and even antagonistic, are both important in the divine scheme of things. Carry out each task with respect and satisfaction.
Good morning. Let's take this moment to close our eyes and connect it to the spirit in charge of these activities and our spirit guards. And let's ask them to enlighten us so we can understand the message that will be presented to us by Teresa. May you be inspired by the life of Euripedes Barsanulfo. So it will help us through our days and give us strength, faith, and understanding of our life. We thank God, Jesus, for this moment of learning and understanding. And so be it.
All right. So good morning, everyone. It's good to have you all here. So our lecture, as Marcos said, it's about Euripedes Barsanulfo. I have to confess that even though I'm a Spiritist for over 30 years, I'm actually ashamed of myself because I have heard about him. I had no clue who he was. And now that I had to read his biography and study to do this lecture, I actually feel ashamed, like how could I be a Spiritist for so long and I haven't ever read about this guy and learned from him. And we're going to see that the Euripedes is someone that can easily be put at the same level as Paul of Tarsus, Chico Xavier, and some other spirits, high evolved spirits that we have on earth. I'm gonna try to hold my emotions because every single time I read it and even when I was reviewing my notes, I cry because I think it's just absolutely amazing the work that he did. In fact, when Corina Novellino, which is the author of the biography, said to Chico Xavier, you know, I'm gonna write the biography from Euripedes, and Francisco Xavier looked at her and said, okay, my dear, you know that's a very, very hard task to do because writing about Euripedes, it's almost as writing the biography of Jesus himself, taking the right proportions, right? But she did, and I think she did a good job, at least to give us an idea of who he was and the amazing work that he did. But before we talk about Euripedes, let's go one step back and let's talk about his parents first, right? Because they had to come before he was able to come. So in 1874, so this story starts in the 19th century, In 1874, Jerônima, more known as Mecca, at the age of 14 is marrying his father, Mojico. And very interesting story. So old-fashioned style. She cannot see the groom until the day of the wedding. Anybody wants it? Yeah, anybody? No? So he goes to her parents' house with his father and a friend, and to ask, to negotiate with her father this marriage. And only thing that she can see is by the crack of the door, she sees the two young guys, and she doesn't know which one it is. And there's one that really she doesn't like it. She goes, oh my gosh, I hope Euripedes is not that guy, because I really don't want to marry that guy. So negotiations is done. The wedding days come. She's crying because she's desperate that if the guy is the one that she don't like now she said, I'm done. And luckily, the day of the wedding, it's not. It's the other guy. So it's Mojico. And of course, they meet each other at the wedding, and there's some marriages that we know they already come from the spiritual plan. They love each other, they took care of each other for many, many years, and it was a very loving and caring marriage that they had from that day on. In 1876, so 2 years later, they welcomed their first kid, so it's a daughter. And with the birth of their first child also starts Mecca's health problems. So Mecca has what they call crisis. That's what they call it at the time. They don't know what it is. She would have crisis. So she would faint and not feel well. She would have visions, and this was constant. And no one could cure that on her. And it starts right after the birth of her first child. And Mojico, her husband, always took care with her, the most patience and everything, even through all those crises that she had, that she cared for 30 years. Okay? So from the birth of the first child, along the next 26 years, they had 15 kids. 15. And you complain that you can't take care of one or two and they drive you nuts. Right? So how about you type 10, 15? No, let's go and see how hard it is, right? And that's with a washing machine, dryer, dishwasher, So let's try a few more. Don't need to be 15, just try a few more. And then on May 1st, Labor Day in Brazil, 1880, it's born their third child, which is Euripedes Barsanulfo. Very symbolic to have him being born on Labor Day, because this guy did labor, and we're gonna see the history. They had a very, very poor life. Their financial means were very, very scarce, and they were a very strong Catholic faith family, like very, very connected to the Catholic Church. Euripedes had a very, very poor childhood, so he was malnourished, and because of that he was always sick, like right from the young age. But since he was very young, like 3-4 years old, he already had this interest for learning and studying and everything. So he asked his father to take him to school. So he's probably at the age of 3 or 4, Dad is already taking him to school, and he learns how to read and count like there's no time, like super quick, and he's excellent, and he's right away is that child that excels in school and really shows that he has something different. And also, since early age, like 3, 4, 5 years old, he already has this huge interest for the sick, for the people in need and sick, especially his mother. So every time his mother would get sick, he would sit by her and be there with her, taking care of her. And he would do it with any sick person that he would find, like around the family and everything. He had this interest, of understanding what was happening with them, but also helping. So something that was very natural at him. But then in 1885, when he's only 5 years old, the family has to move to another city. So this is all happening in a city called Sacramento, which is a city in Minas Gerais, in the state of Minas Gerais in Brazil. And his father gets a job opportunity in another city called Cipó, because Cipó now has a new train station. He can work in the new train station. So you get a better salary, so better life for the family. So they all moved to Cipó. The problem is that Cipó has no school at all. So it has a train station, but there's no school. So for about 3-4 years, Euripedes keeps studying with his father. So his father keeps homeschooling him, right? Helping him to learn and teach him as much as he could. But in 1889, his dad now is sick with an illness that I could not translate fine, but it's called beriberi. I don't know. It's called beriberi. It's called beriberi as well? Okay, thank you. So his dad now is sick with beriberi. He is sick. So a lot of problems now, and they decide, you know what, even though we have a better financial situation in here, let's go back to Sacramento because we have better support in there. So they all moved back to Sacramento in 1889 when Euripedes is 9 years old. And coincidence or not, I mean, there's no coincidence in Spiritism, that same year a new school opens in Sacramento. It's called Colégio Miranda. So it's this new teacher that moves to the city and decides to open this new school. And Euripedes starts to go to that school. And there he will learn, on top of everything else, he starts to learn French and Latin in this school. In 1889, on the same year they went back as well, a new doctor moves to the city, Dr. Onofre. So he's about 9 years old here. So this new doctors in the city make friends with his family, and he gets in contact with his medical books. And he starts reading those medical books as if they were like, for a kid 9 years old, like a cartoon, kind of, like for him, like, and he starts to absorb them, to the point that the doctor gets concerned and goes talk to his father, saying, you know what, I don't think a kid this age should be reading those books. And the father goes, you know what, I agree. So his father goes to talk to his mother, and actually it's funny because when you read his biography, you notice that his father never goes to talk to him. He always go to his mother and say, you should go and tell your son. And you know, so the whole time is like that. So he goes talks to his wife and say, you should go and talk to Euripedes. Like, he probably should not be reading those books, he's too young. So she goes. And she goes to Euripedes and say, you know what, your father and the doctor, they're concerned, you should not be reading these books. And he looks at her and say, but Mom, I'm reading them because I'm trying to find the cure to help you. Because since he was 4 or 5 years old and he would see his mom sick, he had the sole mission in his life that he had to find the cure for his mother. That's the only thing that he had. Like, he was on a mission and he needed to find a cure for her. So when he gives that answer to her with so much care, she just melts down and she just cannot say anything to him. So she goes, keep doing it. Exactly, keep doing it. Like, what I'm gonna say to a kid that says he's trying to find the cure for his mother, like, which is herself, right? So she just let it go and say, you know what, you wanna read the books, read it, right? And then years later, when he's about 17, so now we're in 1897, so he's about 17 years old. One of the sons of that teacher that moved to school and then opened Colégio Miranda used to love homeopathic medicine. And he had books about it. So Euripedes, in contact with him, gets very interested, borrow all his books and everything else that he can study about, and he starts to do a very, very serious study about homeopathic medicine. And he starts to think, you know what, I'm pretty sure that's here that I'm going to find the cure for my mom's illness. And he really starts to study. And then he eventually opens a pharmacy. So he opens a homeopathic pharmacy for free. So he charges nothing to help people. So that's his first work with medicine, and start going, and it's pretty much by teaching himself, by reading books and teaching himself and everything. Of course, this is 1897, around, you know, the laws were different. Today, to open a pharmacy would be different, to have a license, this and that. You know, that was different at the time. And at that time already, he not only opens the pharmacy, but he was already going everywhere to help people they were sick. So people started to like know him and start to call him already. Oh, someone's sick. So every time someone's sick, he would go and try to help these people. He had this attraction to help people in need and people that were sick. In 1897, so same thing, around the time he's 17 years old, happened something very interesting on the nearby city, the city of Santa Maria. He opens the first Spiritist grouping there. And that's become almost a scandal in the region, which is extremely strongly Catholic faith, right? Actually, at this point in Brazil, I think everywhere is pretty much a strong Catholic faith. So all those, and opens this Spiritist group. They have mediumistic groups that apparently are helping people and healing people, and says that they're receiving, talking with spirits. And this is seen as the work of the devil. That's pretty much how it's seen, right? Euripedes is a little bit concerned because now he has an uncle called, that everybody called as a tio senhor, and his godmother, Sana, are both part of it. And he loves his uncle, like he really loves his uncle. He has a really good relationship with his uncle. So that kind of bothers him a little bit, because by now, Euripedes is highly engaged inside of the Catholic Church. Actually, he was since he was little. Like he started as an altar boy, and now he's part of a congregation called Vincent de Paul congregation. So he's highly involved in every single, like going to the mass, involved with every single aspects of the church, and he's seen as someone very valuable inside of the church because his level of discipline is very high, right? So he's really seen as like a high asset inside of the church, right? So it really bothers him that his uncle and his godmother are mixed with this thing that actually comes from the devil, right? So it's bothering him a little bit. Okay, it's 1897, this Spiritist Center opens there in Santa Maria. Starts to bring a lot of talking in the region. But the years passed by. It's 1902, so a few years later. Euripedes now, who actually right from early teenage starts to work as a teacher professor in the school. That's how amazing he is at school. Decides to open a school. So he calls some friends, some other teachers, say, hey, let's open a school. And he opens a school called Liceu Sacramento. And they teach all the subjects, normal subjects, but they're very strong at teaching science and arts in the school. And the schools become so famous, like they're so good and their curriculum is so amazing that people from all over the country starts to send their school to Sacramento to study at Liceu Sacramento, at his school. So in 1903, so a day after he opened his school, and about 5 years after that, Spiritist Center has been opened in Santa Maria, his uncle comes for a visit. So tio senhor comes for a visit, and Euripedes asked mom to put his bed on his bedroom. Like he really loved his uncle. Said, I wanted him to, prepare a bed in my bedroom. I want him to be sleeping with me. And because he's a very devoted, before it happens, this thing with tio senhor, in the same year, because he's so devoted to the Catholic Church, a priest called Augusto Maia decides to give a prohibited book to Euripedes to read. So he calls Euripedes aside and saying, Euripedes, I have a book in here for you to read, but you cannot share with anybody. You cannot tell anybody that I gave you this book, and you cannot share with anybody because it's a prohibited book. Anybody guess which book it is? It's called the Bible. So at the time, only the priests and higher up could read the Bible. It was prohibited to anybody out of the church to read the Bible. It's a very good way of controlling, right? Imagine you come to the Spiritist Center and I say, okay, but you cannot read any of Kardec's books. You cannot read it. Don't worry, we'll tell you what's in the books. So basically, that's what used to happen at the time. So he gives him a copy of the Bible. And Euripedes goes and starts reading the Bible. And that's the very first seed that's planted inside of him. Because if he starts reading the New Testament, that's the first thing he starts to reading. And he's amazed. Oh, and the Bible's in Latin, but remember he had learned Latin in school? So he's amazed about what's written in the gospel. Amazed. But he starts already, he's a very rational man, and he starts already to think, what I'm reading here, it's not quite matching with what I see in the religion that I follow. So it's already like, something's off in here. But there's one piece of the New Testament that really bothers him. It's called the Sermon of the Mountain. Blessed are the afflicted. Blessed are the ones who suffer. Blessed are the ones who, are small. He doesn't get it. He absolutely doesn't get it. He goes, and then Jesus promising, blessed are the afflicted because they are going to be bigger. But where is this bigger? Because I haven't seen it. Where is this promise that he's making that if you suffer, if you do this, and you're going to get it? Because I haven't seen anybody getting it yet. Where is it? And how can a God that pure justice see that it's good if you afflicted, if you suffer? He couldn't get it. Like the Sermon of the Mountain, he could not get it. He just couldn't, right? So he goes back to Father Augusto Maia and asks, I didn't get it. What he means about that? And the answer that he gets is, in the Christian teachings, there is always a mystery. It's not up to us to know. And he's so frustrated with this answer that but he didn't want to argue. So it's like, okay. And he left. But he was so frustrated with the answer. Like, what is this about mystery? What do you mean? We're not up to know. If it was not up to know, Jesus wouldn't talk about. So, from there on, he carries with him this seed with him that's like, man, something's wrong here. I want to know more. I want to understand that, right? So in the same year, Tio Senhor comes to visit, and he's ready to convert Tio Senhor back to the light. Make him to understand this thing about Spiritism is wrong. And he even has a debate with him. The only thing is that Tio Senhor is a medium in the group, but a very humble man in terms of school education. Right? He's almost an illiterate man. So he doesn't have the wording or the arguments to actually do a debate with Euripedes, right? But he decides to give him a book from a French philosopher who had just been translated to Portuguese at the time, coincidence of course, again, from a French philosopher called Leon Denis, called After Death. He gives the book to Euripedes. Euripedes just reads the introduction and goes, and he goes to bed and he reads the over 300 pages that same night. So every time that his uncle would wake up during the night, he would be there reading the book. Like, he cannot stop. By the morning, he had finished reading the whole book. And the book brings tears to his eyes because he had never seen anything so amazing as what he had read in that book, so rational, so consoling as what he read in that book. And he actually says that he finally starts to see the Spiritism as the consoler. And he even says, I never saw someone sing the glories of creation with so much depth and beauty. That's what he said about the book. So next morning, he gets up, and he has a place in the nature that he likes to go. It's kind of far away from his house. And he goes all the way there with the book and he reads the book again. That's how amazing he was by the book. So from there on, he starts to read everything about Spiritism. And at the time, there was not much available. They had already I think they had already the Spiritist magazine at the time. But that's imagine he's in Sacramento, like in the countryside of Minas Gerais, so to get materials was not much, but whatever he could get in his hands about Spiritism, he starts reading. And there's another problem. Now that he gets in touch with the Spiritism, he starts to go less and less to the church. It's not disconnected, but you remember this guy is highly engaged? Well, now he's not highly engaged anymore. And the family and the church, the bishop and the high priest are starting to notice. And everybody starts to get worried. Doing nothing for now, but we're worried because there's some changing here. We don't like it. It doesn't look good. So they're watching. Next year, in 1904, Euripedes decided he wants to go and watch one of those sessions. I want to see. Let's go there and see. Because he read a lot, but he's still kind of just thinking about the communication between the spirits and the living. That doesn't match for me. Let's go. So he asks a friend, say, hey, let's go there. Okay. So he gets there. The mediumistic meeting is already starting. He goes with the utmost respect. He listens to the opening pray, and he really he really went with open mind and really with full respect. And as soon as he gets there, he makes a mental wish. So he doesn't say it to anybody. So in his mind, this is his mental wish. I understood everything from the Bible, but my capacity to understand the Sermon of the Mountain is closed. If it is true that spirits can communicate with the living, I pray to John the Evangelist to teach me through the medium Aristides. So he even picked which medium he wanted. And he only asked John the Evangelist to explain him, right? Like, why not?
He was there.
Exactly. So, he just, if this is true, I just want a John the Evangelist to teach me about the Sermon of the Mount. And Aristides was, again, another very, very humble man, almost illiterate, that clearly would, if himself could not give him that explanation, right? So he said, if it is true, I want a John the Evangelist, and I want a true Aristides as a medium. And in few minutes, Aristides, or a spirit through Aristides, it starts to give him the most beautiful and amazing explanation of the Sermon of the Mountain. And explains to him with so much rationality and with so much love and with so much clarity that Euripedes was so touched in every single fiber of his heart that moment he said, now I believe that the communication is possible. And he's absolutely touched by the teachings, and then he realized, now I get it. The Sermon of the Mount is just a resume of all the Gospel of Christ. It's all in there. So if you take all the Gospel of Christ and just keep the Sermon of the Mount, it's there. It's about his teachings of love and charity and loving one another. That's what it is, right? It's not a mystery. It's not something that we cannot know, right? And then at the end of the communication is signed by Peace, John the Evangelist, right? So that's what he asked for. And what most fascinated him was really the logic on the explanation. So it was not, this, we don't know. So the fact there was logic and rational, because he was very logic and rational man. That's what really caught him. Right? And even though he had no doubt anymore about the Spiritist teachings, he was still connected to the Catholic Church. He still had some of the things he still go there, much less, but he still kind of had that connection in there. But the bishop and the high priestess now are very concerned, so they even had a meeting. Let's meet up, everybody. We're losing our best sheep in here. We cannot have this. Have what's happening. This is makes no sense. So they're very, very, very concerned. And now they're even having meetings. The bishop from Uberaba, which is the bigger city close by, comes to talk to him, like what's going on, you know, like they're very, very worried about it. Okay. But then a couple of weeks later, his uncle invites him to go again to another mediumistic group meeting in Santa Maria. So he goes, and he's there, and Dr. Bezerra de Menezes, so the spirit of Dr. Bezerra de Menezes, through one of the mediums, actually through his own uncle, tells him, step in and be aligned with the mediums, because you have a healing mediumship. So he very humble, steps to the line of the mediums, and he stays there. The moment he aligns, the spirit of Vincent de Paul starts to talk to him. And coincidence or not, remember Congregation Vincent de Paul through the Catholic Church? So it starts to talk to him and say, I have been your mentor since your birth. So he's his mentor. You know how we all have our mentor? No, he's just Vincent de Paul. Just, you know. And he presents himself as being his mentor and guide since his birth. And he says to him, let it go with no resentment, the position that you have in the congregation. So basically, go and leave with no feeling guilt or anything. I invite you to start a new institution, which the base will be the Christ, and in which I will be the spiritual director and you be the material commander. So I'll be directing you from the spiritual plan. You're going to be in command in the incarnated side. And he warns him. He says, the doors of Sacramento will be closed to you. Your friends will desert you. Your own family will be against you. But don't worry. Spread the truth. Because from now on, the responsibilities of your spirit have been amplified with no limits. So basically, the knowledge that you're having right now, your spirit is going to be so amplified that your job now is to spread the truth. Maybe people around you may not understand, but you have now your mission is with the truth, is not with the people around you. So basically, your mission now is with God and not with the people around. Easy way to understand when Jesus said, forsake father and mother, right? That's what it is. It's not telling for him to do not like his family or friends anymore, but just say, if they do not understand your mission, keep the faith and go ahead. So Euripedes goes back to the city, and the first thing that he does, it goes to the church and break completely his ties with the church. And when the people in the church ask him, because then it comes the bishop, it comes everybody, like, why? What's happening? Because they thought, maybe what they thought at the beginning, they thought maybe someone, gossipy, and maybe he's hurt because someone said something, and then he's just leaving because, some resentment. And he goes, no. He tells them exactly, with very loving and care and serenity, he tells them, no, exactly what happened. This is what's happened, and basically, I'm a Spiritist now. And the answers to him was, you are crazy. Spiritism is a fabric of crazies, and you are crazy. And the answers to them is, blessed madness that has enough discernment to distinguish wrong from right and to exchange the fake for the reality of the spirit. If you guys call me mad, great, because that's the best madness that I have ever experienced in my whole life. I want to be crazy forever. That's basically what he's telling them. Okay. From that moment on, for the rest of his life, and actually even after he discarnated, he was persecuted by the Catholic Church in all matters that you can possibly imagine. Right? On top of everybody else, and on top of everything that's happening in the spiritual plane. And in fact, a whole movement in the spiritual plane starts to happen to stop his mission, right? Because we know that that's how it is. Every time you start something good, what's against what's around you. And if it's not interesting for them, they'll try to stop, just like we do here, right? That's what we do. Right? So now he's not only being persecuted by the incarnated plan, he's now being persecuted by the discarnated plan as well. Everything to stop his mission. But he does not stop at all. And remember the father, Father Augusto Mario, who gave him the book, the Bible? He feels super guilty. Super, super guilty, because he thinks, I started this. It's my fault. And with this feeling of guilt, he actually opens a door for the low evolved spirits, and they drive him to madness, to a point that he has to go to an institution. And that was the first moment that the spiritual plan is trying to attack Euripedes, because they knew that would really hurt Euripedes to see that the man who actually helped him now happening to this. But Euripedes keeps his faith, prays for him, and does not give up. And he keeps going. The first thing is affected is his school. Everybody starts to take his kids out of the school, because he's mad. The professor is mad. Teacher Euripedes is mad. So all the Catholic parents start to take his kids away. And actually, first thing that abandons him is his colleagues. All the teachers leave him alone. So now he's left with very few students, has to teach every single class, but he keeps going. He does not give up. So he's actually forced to close the school. He has no means to keep the school anymore. But at this point, Euripedes' mediumship starts to flourish, like really strong. And at some point of the book, they say that Euripedes actually had almost all the mediumship described in the medium's book. So he could see, hear, he could psychograph, he could incorporate, he could do bicorporality, so he could be here and go somewhere else. And at this point, he starts to happen a lot of this with him, the bicorporality. So he starts to see a lot of himself out of his body, either as he's sleeping, so his conscious is sleeping and he knows he's out, or he eventually would be teaching, and his kids are even know, and he was gone, because they know already. So he would be gone, help someone, treat the sick, and they would come back, right? And at this point, that's exactly when this is happening with him. Like, this starts to flourish, like this capacity of doing this. And one night, he sees himself leaving the body and going high, like really, really, really high. And that's even disturbing him, because like he never felt him so separate from, saw him so separate from his body. But even though he just wanted to go back to his body, there was this strong, loving attraction that just doesn't let him go back. And he describes that he starts to go high and high and high and high and like really high, until finally he gets in this green field, beautiful green field. And from far away, he sees a man, and he's attracted to him, and he comes closer. And when he comes closer, he sees it's Jesus. The very moment he humbles himself, puts his head down, and starts crying because he knows he's not worthy of that meeting. He says, I don't deserve this. Like the emotion of being there, it's so amazing. He starts crying. And then all of a sudden, he finally has the courage to look up, and he sees that Jesus is crying as well. And for a moment, he doesn't have the courage to say anything. And then he finally asks Jesus and say, why are you crying? And Jesus does not answer. And then Euripedes asks, are you crying for the ones who do not believe in you in the world? And Jesus says, no, my son. I do not suffer for the ones that do not believe in me, and to which you own love. I cry for the ones who know the gospel but does not practice it. The moment Euripedes hears this, it gives him so much pain and so much sadness that he just immediately goes back to his body and he wakes up in his body. And from that moment on, without telling anybody about this divine revelation, actually this meeting they had with Jesus, we only knew about it on a psychographic message that he gave through Chico Xavier after he had discarnated. But from that moment on, he decides that he's going to devote himself to all the people he need and seek without resting a single day, serving until his corporeal death, until he discarnated. By the time Euripedes is already attracting a lot of people to his house, because now he's attending people in his house. They're not at the time. It's too much for his family. So the father helps him to buy a house. And that's where he pretty much starts, he like puts the pharmacy in there, still running the pharmacy. And he starts, and eventually that's where he's going to open his school again in this house. And Spiritist Center, first Spiritist Center in Sacramento. Has been a year now, he's turned to the Spiritism. Family is kind of a respecting, but like, no, we don't get much here, but we're going to respect. But then a year later, his mother comes and knocks at his door. Again, a message from the father, right? So, Euripedes, I came here because your father asked me to give you a message. He said it's for you to forget this thing about Spiritism, destroy all these books, because he's not willing to have a crazy son in the family, right? And this thing about Spiritism, this thing from the devil, it's from crazy people. So basically, he doesn't want this. So let's stop it right now. And he only asks her, "Does Daddy knows anything about Spiritism?" And she doesn't quite understand his question. She goes, "Well, anyways," because basically what he's saying is like, he doesn't even know what he's talking about. So how can he say that? He doesn't even know what he's talking about. But she doesn't get it. She goes, "Anyways, I don't understand that, but basically I'm here to give a message, you know," and the message is giving. And he goes, "Mom, come here. Let me explain." And he starts to teach her about Spiritism. Start to talk to her about the gospel through the Spiritism view. And Mecca, who was a spirit who was prepared already from before, starts to receive all these teachings with so much enthusiasm and love. Then, bottom line, she just goes home, looks at her husband, and says, "I'm a Spiritist." That's everything she tells him. Now the father's confused. Wait a second. I send you there to convince him to do not be a Spiritist. Now you come here and you're a Spiritist. And he said, and there's more. Euripedes send you a message and say, for you to read about Spiritism, and then you come to talk to him. So basically, enlighten yourself. And then if you want to debate, and if you don't like, great, but at least talk about something that you know what you're talking about. A few years later, his whole family is a Spiritist. And you see that through his story, that his family was a key, every single person on his family was a key spirit to work on his work. So they're fantastic collaborators. So they collaborate in the school, in the pharmacy, in the Spiritist Center, everything. So not a coincidence that all those 15 kids and the father, mother all came on the same family, you know, coincidence again, Spiritism, you know. So now it's 1905. He decides to open his first Spiritist group in Sacramento called Hope and Charity. He was very, very serious about passes. So if you want to become a medium for passes, he first would make you for a month take care of the sick. Like, go take care of the sick. Go spend a whole night taking care of someone who's in fever, sick. Months, because he thought it was very important for people to understand the charity, the devotion, this connection with the people before you could actually go to the Spirit Center and be there giving a pass. Today, just to take a course, no, I'm going to pass, right? But for him, that was very, very important, because that's what he dealt with, right? With cure. Right? So remember that he had to close the Liceo of Sacramento, but because he was such a great teacher, some parents still having him as a teacher for his kids. So at this moment, what he was able to do, he had rented a small room that he could barely financially keep. and was teaching a few kids, right? But then he decides to include Spiritism teachings in the curriculum. And then the few students that he had were taken away by the Catholic parents, even though the kids didn't want to leave, but the parents takes them away. So Euripedes is there one day, sitting in his empty classroom, crying, right? Feeling abandoned, and he starts crying and starts to pray. And all of a sudden he feels a desire to write down. But the moment he grabs the pen and goes write down, and he realizes who's the spirit who wants to write down, he drops the pen and says, no. It's impossible. I'm being deceived by some inferior spirit. Like, there's no way this spirit wants to write for me. So the spirit grabs mechanically his hand and sits down and writes and says, do not close the doors of the school. Erase the sign with the domination Liceu Sacramento, which is a remnant of the human pride. In substitution, you will carry the school Colégio Allan Kardec. Teach my son's gospel on Wednesdays and start an astronomy course. I will cover the Colégio Allan Kardec under my blanket of love. The message is signed, Mary, a servant of God. So it's Jesus' mother writing to him, saying, change the name. I'll be the protector of this school. In no time, he had teachers coming to want to work with him. And the school, and he made such a revolution in educational system that in no time, the school was full of students. They had to go to a different place, make a bigger school to be able to get all the schools. And every time registrations are open, in a matter of hours, they're all filled up. Like, there's no more spots for anybody. Like, everybody wanted to go to that school. And he created the first mixed classes, because at the time, girls and boys didn't go to school at the same time. So a lot of parents didn't like it, took his kids out. So everything that he did, there's something against, but he always kept what he thought was the right thing to do. And that's okay. Some people took their kids out, but a lot of people wanted to come. So the school was always full. And mostly because of the loving way that he had to teach the kids. And he had such a passion for education that it just transmitted to the kids, right? And a lot of those kids are still from Catholic families going to his school. So every Wednesday at 12:30, he would start with a prayer just before the study of the Gospel according to the Spiritists. Because remember, Mary tells him on Wednesdays, you're going to teach my son's Gospel. So every Wednesday, they would study the Gospel according to the Spiritists. But at 12:30, he would start with a prayer. His prayer was heard in the whole city. In the whole city, no matter where you were. Was he screaming inside of the school? No. So the spiritual plan amplifies his voice every day on Wednesdays. So the whole city can hear his praying. And in that moment, the whole city is involved in this light and good fluids for half an hour. And people got used to it. So kids would say, Mom, what's this? Oh, this is just Euripedes praying. Like, they all knew it. So like 12:30 on Wednesdays, they all could hear his voice praying. There's no speakers at the time. There's no technology. There's no wireless connections, no speakers, no nothing. The whole city could hear his praying. So the pharmacy at this point is still running. He's now helping an average of 1,000 people daily. Yes, daily. It's not a typo. It's a daily. It's not weekly, monthly. It's 1,000 people daily. On top of the people that he would help, that would just knock at his door constantly for help. Dr. Bezerra Jimenez was his main spiritual guide for the prescriptions and help with the homeopathic medication. He also would do surgeries. He would deliver babies. He would do anything to help people. And funny enough, that a lot of times what he would prescribe to people was to read the Spiritist books. That was his prescription. Read the Gospel according to the Spiritists. Read the Medium's book. Read the Spirit's book. That would be his prescription sometimes. Sometimes combined with the medication. Sometimes just, no, read the book. That's what you need, right? So put together now school, Spiritist center, pharmacy. You think he's busy? So this is his schedule. Because if you guys, we think we are busy, okay? So he starts at 4 in the morning. From 4 to 7 in the morning, he would do the prescription for the outsiders. Because the pharmacy would have a time to open for the locals, but he would have letters from all over the country, people asking for something because you were sick. So from 4 in the morning to 7, so probably he woke up before 4, so at 4 he could start work. Okay? So he would do all the prescriptions for the outsiders. Right? Then from 8 to 10, he would be the manipulation and the dispatch of all this medication for all over the country. Then from 10 to 3 p.m., school, 3:30 to 5:30. The prescription and manipulation for the locals. So from 3:30 to 5:30 now the pharmacy is open for the locals. So it would be prescribing, doing consultation, manipulating, and treating the locals. 7 to 9, activities at the Spiritist group. On Thursdays, he would be doing the bookkeeping for his father's business, because now his father owns 2 stores. This guy thinking busy. This guy starts at 4 in the morning, and on top of the constant people knocking at his door. Oh, my mom's sick. My wife is delivering, and he would go even late evening, overnight. Like there's no stopping with him. He would sleep an average of 3 hours a night when he didn't spend the night sitting beside someone who's sick. When I was reading this whole thing, I kept thinking, my goodness, I do this much of work and I feel this much of tired. This guy does this much of work and there's never tired, never stops doing the work of Christ. And most of my work is not doing the work of Christ, his was. Every single moment of his day was to do the work of Christ. The pharmacy didn't charge a penny, nothing for the medications they was giving. You think he's busy? From 1907 to 1912, he was the vereador from the city, which was kind of the MP here. Do you think he's busy? He found time to be an MP for the city, which during those 3 years was the highest evolution that the city had in his whole history. He put a power plant in the city. He put a railing system, 14 kilometers of railing and train station and everything, piped water, amongst a lot of things he did. I really don't know how, where finds time, I don't know. It's amazing. So he really, from the moment that he met Christ, he really decided, I am going to do the work of Christ, because I don't want to be the one that the Christ is going to be crying for, because I know about the gospel, so I need to practice. Do you think that's hard? So he's not only now doing the good job, but now he has a whole persecution against him. So he's charged against, he's charged for charlatanism. So the Catholic Church, with some other people, charged him for charlatanism and for illegal practice of medicine. This goes to court. First judge cannot decide, sends to another judge, who sends to another judge, who sends to another judge, right? And Euripedes is very, very worried about it, although he's not like, at the same time that he's calm, he's worried about it. And then the spirit of Ismael, if anybody knows Ismael, is just the spirit that works directly with Jesus and who takes care of Brazil, right? From the book Brasil, Coração do Mundo, Pátria do Evangelho. So Ismael shows to him and say, don't worry, I'm with you. In this cause, I'm your guide. So don't worry, I will support you. And the next night, he has his second meeting with Jesus in his garden. When he wakes up at 3 in the morning to start his day, he always starts going to his garden and pray before he starts his day. And Jesus shows to him and say, my son, do not fear. We are with God. The victory is ours. So this process goes from judge to judge. None of them can give a verdict. None of them, because they feel awful. Like none of them can. Like they look at this guy, like, why are we persecuting this guy? So eventually, the fourth judge just sends for the first judge, who says, you know what, let's just close this case. I cannot give a verdict. Let's close this case. And that's what happens. Case closed, archived, and that's it. Many times, hitmen were hired to kill him. All the time he was saved by the spiritual plan. Say, hey, you know, don't go through this street, go through that street because there's someone waiting there for you. Many times they tried to kill him. When this whole process ends, the whole city is in party and so happy that he's free, and he's actually very concerned. He calls his close friends at the Spiritist group and say, this is a very serious moment. Let all pray for the persecutors. Because he was very afraid that the discarnated, so the spiritual plan, and the incarnated would actually now start to persecute those people who tried to persecute him. So he starts to pray for them. So that's the kind of man he is. Euripedes now, it's close to his discarnation. He knows, because it's shown to him more than one time, his own funeral, and he knows it's coming. And then finally in 1918, we have the influenza epidemic in Europe, so-called the Spanish flu. It's killing a lot of people in Europe, and he knows eventually it is going to get to Brazil. So he already prepares everything, like extra medication, everything ready. And then in October 1918, they have the first case in Sacramento, which spreads like quickly through the city, including Euripedes. He gets sick. He also now has the influenza. For 3 days, even though he's sick, he's still going and attending and treating every single people that he could do it. And they knew he was getting sick. They knew he needed to rest. He would not rest. So they called his mother. They called Mecca, because they knew she would be the only one that would have the power to make him lie down. So Mecca comes and says, my son, you better lie down. So he lies down and never is able to get up again. But even though in bed, he's still writing prescriptions. So on November 1st, 1918, at the age of 38, he discarnates. And the whole city and hundreds of people from the neighboring cities comes for his funeral. So he's really loved, and he really spread his love and his charity to everybody around him. And even after he's discarnated, his family and friends kept his work at the pharmacy, at the school, at the Spiritist Center. The school today is actually, it's a government school, so it's a state school, but still exists in Sacramento, College Allan Kardec. Yeah. It changed names for a while, and then I think now it's back to Allan Kardec. His persecution continues after he, and not a single moment he had gone, and he had moments where he could go and say, that's not true, I know, and defend himself. He never defended himself. Never. Because he always believed in God. I don't need to defend myself. I know what am I doing. And even after he discarnated, he started his work still being persecuted. And when people wanted to say, no, we're going to go to the newspaper and we're going to write this because it's not possible, they say, he sends a psychographic message and say, no, do not answer. If anything, pray for them. Do your work. There's no need for answer. There's no need for fight, for argument. Just keep doing the work. So by doing this lecture, I realized how much still more that we can do, right? And we don't need to do what Euripedes did, but maybe let's do a little bit more of the work of the Christ, because this man dedicated his whole life. And I'm so blessed to have read about him and learned about him. And I learned from this, reading his biography, that I'm far away to first understand what's being humble. I don't think I even understand what the word is. Because this man was really humble. And what's really love is. Because he loved everyone. And no wonder that that Chico Xavier said, you know, writing his biography, it's almost like writing Jesus' biography himself, because he loved everybody with no distinction. And everything that he did was dedicated to help the others. So I think we can do a little bit more as well. We don't need to do anything big, but we also can take him as a sample and practice a little bit more and help Jesus on his work here on earth. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Teresa. We do have a few minutes for questions, if anyone have any questions or comments.
Well, did he found a cure for his mother, or at least somewhere?
Actually, yeah, I'm sorry, yeah. So, yeah, because the time I started, I have to cut. So basically, the day that he called his mother, and she started to be Spiritism, she actually became a medium of cure as well. And in many times, Euripedes said that she was actually a much stronger healing medium than he was himself. She just wasn't as developed, but her potential was way higher than him. And they say that any sore that she would touch would be healed in no time. So after she endured this for 30 years, he finally was able to talk with the spirit that was with her. So there was an obsessor with her that was with her for a long time, that came from previous lives, and he was able to talk with the spirit and make the spirit to let it go. And also because Mecca became more aware, because all those faintings and everything, it was actually a mediumship that was not controlled. Yeah. She didn't know it was a mediumship, so that's what it was. So she, because now she has a better controlled mediumship, and because he was able to talk with the spirit, he was able to cure her, to help her, which was his like always his mission as a child. Yeah.
Any other question or comments? So thank you very much, Teresa. Before we go to the passes, just want to let people in the internet know that we're gonna have on May 27 the first Canadian Spiritist conference, and so it will start for us here in Toronto 11 a.m. and it goes until, if not wrong, 5:30 is the last lecture. So it'll all be broadcast through Facebook. Just let us know if you have any question. All right. So thank everyone. Thank you, Teresa. Thank you for those watching through the internet. We're gonna go through the passes now.